If you've been waiting to see what Calgary's spring market would actually do in 2026, well, March just gave us a very clear answer. Sales are still down from last year, prices are still lower than they were a year ago, but the real story is just this. Not all parts of the market are behaving the same way. Detached is holding up relatively well. Semi-detached is staying fairly stable. But condos and row homes are still under much more pressure. So in this video, I'm breaking down the March 2026 numbers for Calgary, the biggest shifts happening by property type, what stands out most as we head deeper into spring, and what both buyers and sellers need to watch right now. Every month, I break down the market in plain English. What changed, what actually matters, and how to think about it strategically. And March is an important month because this is when we usually start to see the spring market reveal its real tone. So if you want to get a plan together now and figure out is the spring the right time for you to buy or sell, then book a call with me, click the link in the bio, but let's get into the video. First, here's the big picture. Calgary is still more balanced than last year. In March 2026, Calgary recorded 1,881 sales, which is down about 12.8% year over year. At the same time, there were 3,409 new listings. Inventory rose to 5,395 homes, and months of supply climbed to 2.87. The total residential benchmark price came in at 565,600, which is down about 4.2% year over year. That tells us a few important things right away. First, this is not a panic market. Sales are lower than last year, but activity is still happening at a healthy pace. Second, supply is elevated enough that buyers have more choice than they did in the tight market phases. And third, the market is no longer moving as one single story. Property types matter more than ever. The Calgary Real Estate Board says this directly in the March release. Trends differ based on property type, with detached and semi-detached remaining relatively tight compared to row and apartment products, where inventory levels are sitting higher relatively to long-term trends. That's the foundation for everything else we're about to talk about. Now, prices. Still lower than last year, but spring has brought some stability. The total residential benchmark price in Calgary is 565,600. Year over year, that's still down just over 4%. But one thing that stands out is that prices have improved from where they were at the end of 2025 and early 2026. The benchmark moved from 554,000 in January to 560,000 in February, and then to 565,000 in March. So while the market is still below last year's levels, spring has brought some seasonal lift. That matters because it suggests the market is not spiraling lower. Instead, it looks more like the market that reset in late 2025 and is now trying to find its footing. But again, the stability is not uniform across the board. Detached homes continue to be the strongest part of Calgary's market. In March, detached sales were 982. Inventory was 2,181. Months of supply sat at 2.2, and the benchmark price was 741,300, down about 3.3% year over year. That is still a softer pricing environment than last year, but compared to the rest of the market, detached is clearly holding up better. The Calgary Real Estate Board notes that detached inventory remains lower than long-term trends, which is helping limit downside pressure in this segment. So what does that mean in practical terms? If you're a seller, with a detached home, especially in a strong location and a realistic price range, you're still in the most stable part of the market. If you're a buyer, detached is still competitive enough that you need to move intelligently, not recklessly. But you can't assume every detached listing is a steal. Semi-detached is quietly one of the steadier segments. Semi-detached homes are not getting much attention, but they're actually one of the most stable segments in the market right now. In March, Calgary saw 193 semi-detached sales with 480 active listings, 2.49 months of supply, and a benchmark price of $686,100, which is only down about 0.85% year over year. That's a very different story from condos and row homes. Semi-detached is benefiting from being more affordable than detached while still appealing to buyers who want a more house-like product than an apartment or townhouse. So if you're a buyer, this segment can still offer solid value, but without the same level of downward pressure you're seeing in condos. And if you're a seller, the takeaway is simple. This is not the market to get greedy, but it's still a market where the right home can perform very well. Row homes are still softer but not falling apart. Row homes remain under more pressure than detached or semi-detached. In March, there were 322 row sales. Inventory reached 960. Months of supply climbed to 2.98. And the benchmark price came in at 423,900, down about 6.2% year over year. That's a meaningful year over year decline, and it confirms that row homes are still feeling the weight of increased supply and buyer choice. But it's also important not to overstate that this isn't a segment that has collapsed. It's just one where sellers have lost leverage compared to the hot market years. For buyers, this segment continues to offer some of the better negotiation opportunities in the city. For sellers, you need to understand you are competing harder now, not just on price, but on presentation, location, and perceived value relative to other products. Apartments and condos. This is still the biggest adjustment story. If there's one segment that continues to stand out in March, it's apartments. In March, Calgary recorded 384 apartment sales, 1,774 active listings, 4.62 months of supply, and a benchmark price of 300,300, down roughly 9.3% year over year. This is the weakest pricing performance amongst the major property types. Calgary Real Estate Board specifically notes that apartment supply continues to rise and the resale apartment conditions are favoring the buyer in many parts of the city. This is a segment where buyers have the most leverage right now. If you're a condo buyer, especially if you're buying for long-term use and not short-term speculation, this is where you can be selective and negotiate. If you're a condo seller, this is the segment where pricing discipline matters the most. You cannot chase last year's expectations and expect the market to catch up. One of the clearest signals that the market has changed is the days on market. Across Calgary overall, the average days on market in March was 35, up from 29 a year ago. Year to date, it's sitting at 42 days, up from 33 over the same period last year. That's not extreme, but it matters. It means buyers have more time. It means sellers have more competition. And it means pricing wrong is far more dangerous than it used to be. This is especially true in the softer segments, where listings can get stale quickly if they come out too high. Now, there are some major district standouts. One of the things that stood out in March with the Calgary report is how uneven district level performance has become. For detached homes, the West District was actually up 0.69% year over year, with a benchmark price of $997,400, while the Northeast was down 7.13% year over year, with a benchmark price of $574,800. On the total residential side, the district benchmark map shows that West at 719,500, down only 0.2% year over year, where the Northeast is at 473,800, down 8.2% year over year, and the North at 524,700, down 7.5% year over year. East is at 410,200, down 5.2%, and the Southeast at 555,000, down 5.7%. This is a huge reminder that you cannot price or plan based on citywide average prices alone. Neighborhood and property type together are driving outcomes now. So what does this mean for buyers? If you're a buyer, March gives you a few clear advantages. First, you still have more choice than buyers had during the tight market cycle. Second, high density segments, especially apartments and row homes, are giving you real leverage. And third, the market is rewarding patience and analysis, not speed or emotion. But here's the key. You need to think long term. This is not the kind of market where you should buy because you assume everything will rise quickly. This is the market where good buys matter more than fast buys. So if you're buying in 2026, focus on quality, location, resale appeal, and long-term comfort, not trying to time a perfect bottom. What does this mean for sellers? If you're a seller, the message is also very clear. You can still sell successfully in this market, but you cannot sell lazily. You need analytical pricing, strong marketing, great presentation, and realistic expectations. If you're in a detached or semi-detached, especially in stronger districts, you're in a better position. But that does not mean you can ignore the competition. If you're in a row or an apartment product, you need to be even sharper because buyers have alternatives and they know it. The market is no longer doing the heavy lifting for sellers. Strategy is. The big question is now whether March is the start of a steadier spring recovery or just a seasonal bounce within a softer market. The main things I'll be watching next are whether inventory keeps rising, whether detached stays relatively stable, and whether condos continue to absorb supply slowly. If inventory continues building while sales stay below last year, buyers will keep leveraging through spring, especially in attached segments. If demand improves and supply growth slows, detached and semi could tighten up faster than people expect. Right now, the market looks balanced overall, but clearly split by property type. So here's the March 2026 takeaway. Calgary's market is more balanced than it was a year ago. Sales are lower, inventory is higher, prices are still below last year's levels. But detached and semi-detached are holding up much better than row homes and condos. That's the biggest update this month. And it's the one buyers and sellers need to understand before making a move. If you want a breakdown of your exact neighborhood, property type, or price range, reach out anytime. I'll help you understand where your property sits in today's market and what strategy actually makes sense for you now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.